this on vinyl and vision.
Hey folks, thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. This is episode 44 with my very special guest, Dan Boucher. I was going to say the whole name. Dan Boucher, that's good. So Dan is probably best known for being a longtime member of the band Neptune, Boston-based band. They have released a new record. Is that fair to say, new record? We discuss why I'm in question of that right now in the show, so you'll hear all about it. But I purchased this from Dan because he runs the record label Wrong Whole Archival Bureau, and they released this new recording of Neptune's Mother of Millions. So, as a matter of fact, you'll probably be listening to a selection from this album right now called Colborne Bells. Colborne Bells. Colborne? I don't know how to pronounce this. It's a great album. It's a really cool cassette release. We did discuss on the show, and so you will hear if you listen, that they were considering releasing this on vinyl, but considering the amount of artwork that they put into just the cassette alone, the idea of putting this on vinyl would probably be a little difficult and a little costly. So this is the way that they have gone about doing it. I know that they had some limited edition type of releases of this on the Bandcamp site, but it's a very cool album. If you don't like tapes or if you don't have a cassette player, you can always buy the digital, which is also on the Wrong Whole Archival Bureau's Bandcamp page, which will be linked in the show notes. So if you are interested, just go there, just click on that, and it'll take you to the shop where you can find other releases that Wrong Whole has been doing, such as this one by Infrastructure Rot, Mute City. Here, this is so cool. I love this old font, right? TK. And Dan was actually kind enough to gift me these cool cassettes, and I think for the reason to show you what kind of work they do here. These are really cool, kind of really elaborately packaged cassettes. Dan is also in a band called Golden Shores, which is this one, which is also super cool. I believe all of these are available still currently at the Bandcamp page, so go check that out. I have to say thank you to Dan. I have to say thank you to Dan for not only doing the show and talking with me about the Ex+Tom Cora's Scrabbling at the Lock, but obviously all of these cassettes, which, to be honest with you, I haven't been able to listen to all of them yet, but I'm getting through it. I have a lot of stuff to listen to, and also for these vinyl releases from Neptune, I don't know if this is available anymore through the website. I know that he put up a few very limited editions of these on the last Bandcamp Friday, so please go check and look to see if they're there. If not, I'm sure you can still pick up the digital. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Dan. This is really, really very nice of you to send these to me, and I really appreciate it. So aside from that, let's get right into it, because it's kind of a little lengthy one. We did a lot of talking that night, and I love the album. The Ex+Tom Cora Scrabbling at the Lock. It's a pretty good one. I'm definitely going to keep it in my wheelhouse and refer back to it at some points. So, just please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, subscribe, share, like, comment, share, rate, review. There's the last ones. Rate and review, please. And, enjoy the show. But yeah, I would recommend it. So you never went on tour in South America then, huh?
So Neptune had an offer to do 5 shows in Brazil, and we really, really wanted to go, but it was really hard with Neptune because the instruments are all scrap metal. You know, it's all stuff that like we can't just show up somewhere and like, you know, rent metal
Rent gear.
guitars.
Yeah.
So the cost just we would have ended up losing so much money. And I mean, our whole, you know, thing as a band was, you know, we never really cared. We would have done it just to do it, just, you know, to go
Mhm.
people, but we just couldn't afford it. It was crazy
Right.
expensive. So,
Yeah, that sucks. Geez, so you don't run into that same problem traveling in Europe then? I mean, because I didn't realize that wasn't thinking about the handmade instruments and like how much they're like just basically like scrap metal.
right. We didn't run into that. My friend Jason, who is the guy who founded Neptune, he is, you know, he's part scientist, part musician. And what he did before our first European tour was he figured out the exact dimensions of the luggage restrictions, and then he built cases that fit, that would, you know, that would be accepted, that, you know,
Mm.
the dimensions. And then he built new instruments that would fit inside those cases. Um, so, but a lot of times, you know, we got blown over a couple of times to do festivals or whatnot. So I think for the most part on European tours we would break even. But yeah, so actually touring Europe was fairly easy for us, and we found this guy by the name of Heiss, and he had a like his whole business. We actually found this guy through the X's sound band Gert. Um, and he actually booked the X's first tour. So he had his business was he had a bunch of Sprinter vans, and he had a storage space where he had, you know, like numerous amplifiers, drum kits, everything. And he allowed us to leave a lot of our instruments there. So, you know, we had like a merch box, and that made things a lot easier. So that's kind of how we ended up touring Europe so much.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Cool. So tell me now, because we started talking about Neptune already, I was just kind of curious. I did a little bit of the research and like, I couldn't see exactly like when you joined the band. I mean, you weren't a founding member, is that correct?
I was not a founding member, no. So Neptune, it was really kind of an awesome story. I was a big fan of the band. I had seen them once because I went to a show at the Middle East to see this band Turkish Delight, who were phenomenal Boston band, one of my favorites. And their guitarist was Neptune's first drummer. And I knew of Neptune, like I had read about them and I'd read about the instruments, and I was like, this sounds really cool. And I saw them and I was like, shit, this band is awesome. Like it really was a spectacle, you know, to see like the sculptural instruments, and you know, they're always really performative. So that, you know, that really drew me to them. And then uh you know, the pretty much most of the lineup kind of went off. Most of the original lineup kind of went off to do other things, and then a good friend of mine named Jessica Ryland. I don't know if you're familiar with her stuff, but she's a synth builder, and you know, she's just, you know, kind of all around awesome person. She joined the band, and I was really psyched. I was like, whoa, a friend of mine's in Neptune, how cool. And I really loved that lineup. And then there was another one after that, and then a friend of mine by the name of John Manson, who was in a really, really good band in Boston called the Grand Island, called me once, and it was kind of a weird story. My father was really ill and in the hospital, and he was like, hey, look, I know this is not a good time for you, but we need a percussionist in Neptune, and would you want to join? And I was like, fucking A, man. Yes, this is the best time ever. Like, this is great. So it was weird when I joined, I really kind of thought I was only going to do one show. I was just going to be the fill-in percussionist. And, you know, at the end of that one show, I, you know, pretty much was like, all right, I want to be in this band.
Yeah.
So you know, the hardest thing about leaving, it wasn't even like, you know, I love my siblings. I love my family. The hardest about that decision was leaving Neptune. And because we're such good friends, they were, awesome about it. They were like, of course, we think you need to do this. It's a good thing. And, so now we've kind of, we're again talking about, doing stuff remotely. The thing that's really changed about the band is Jason now lives in Colorado. Mark lives in North Carolina. Kevin is up in Boston. So I don't know if you know Kevin Micah. He's kind of always been sort of like a member of the band. Even like, predating my involvement in the band. He has a really awesome project called Animal Hospital, which is definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
So we keep talking about doing stuff. And before the pandemic actually hit, Kevin and I were getting together and doing dual drum practices to try to write some new Neptune material. So yeah, Neptune is like, it's a hard thing to kill. I think it'll just go.
Well, I guess with that ability to have a revolving door or like a kind of consistent cast of characters that you can kind of draw from, and there's no set members necessarily per se. Minus Jason, you were saying that could probably leads to kind of an eternal life, I guess.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, you like to keep busy, it seems. I mean, obviously between all the projects and the label that you run, and obviously that probably keeps you pretty busy too.
It really does. And the label kind of saved me in the pandemic in a lot of ways. Anything musical I love, like talking about music. So the label's been great because I can do a lot of stuff I love doing graphic design. I love interacting with people. So I think in 2020 I had plans to do 4 or 5 releases, and it ended up being 17.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. So it's really fun. Like in a lot of ways, doing the label's really fun because you're like, well, I could put out these records and make art and not really have to do anything. Like I don't have to do music. So, but yeah, it's good. It was a good way to keep me connected with a lot of friends. And it's definitely, it's great because, I kind of draw inspiration from everything, from everywhere. And, seeing different friends doing stuff, I'm like, this is awesome. Let's make a record. Let's, let's put something out. So, yeah, it really snowballed last year and even the previous year. So yeah, it was definitely good for my mental health during lockdown.
That's great. So I have to ask because I mean, you're talking on a show right now called Vinyl and Vision, and I supposedly emphasize on vinyl, which I haven't been doing because of the pandemic. Because with these virtual calls instead of being in person here, I've lost the vinyl element where we'd bring in a record and actually play it and show it off. But your label deals primarily with cassettes.
Yes. And I mean, there's a couple reasons for that. I love vinyl. I'm a vinyl purist, but vinyl production it's really costly. It's not something I couldn't put out 17 pieces of vinyl in a year.
Right. And it's timely too.
Yes. I myself is a music lover and a huge music consumer. I always love the physical product,
Right.
So cassettes are, they're not that expensive to manufacture. You can make them look awesome. They come with a digital download. So, for people who love physical format, you still can have something tangible. And then, I mean, a lot of sadly, I don't get a ton of time to sit in my living room and listen to records. A lot of times I listen to music, if I'm working or, even if I'm in my garage, doing art stuff, like I listen to it on my little Bluetooth speaker or whatever it is.
Right.
So that's kind of why I focus mainly on cassettes. It's more because really vinyl is cost prohibitive. But I don't know. I kind of love doing cassettes. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique. It's definitely kind of like a niche market, I think. I mean, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, vinyl is expensive. It's expensive and it's time consuming to do. Like, you have to have a lot of like prep time ahead of time to like just account for it correctly. Like shipping wise, like if you're doing pre-sales, you
Right.
just know when it's coming in, and like it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 months depending on where you're going, I guess. So yeah, no, I hear you, man. I mean, it's fine. But so quality wise, how do you feel about the difference between the cassette and vinyl?
I mean, nothing sounds like nothing sounds as good as vinyl.
Yeah.
I work with a duplication company called Cryptic Carousel, and I believe they're in upstate New York. So their duplication is great. Like the sound is really good. I mean, you obviously get tape hiss, which is, I guess, sort of akin to vinyl pop.
Yeah, vinyl crackle.
Yeah, but I'm really happy, and all like every artist whose record I put out, once they like listen to the actual set, are really happy with it. And I was surprised. I did a I'm not going to name who it was, but I did a record for a friend who is extremely picky about stuff, which I understand. I am too.
Mm-hmm.
But the cassette came back and they were like, wow, I can't believe it sounds this good. And I was like, oh, cool. That's great. That's good to hear,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I really wish I could do more vinyl. And when Neptune, we'd been talking a lot over the past year about the record we just released, which is called Mother of Millions. Right. And we were going to do it on vinyl. We were going to do double vinyl. And I think the base cost of just pressing the records was somewhere around $4,000. And then, I mean, because we all love like artwork and inserts, and it would have ended up being so much money. We were going to do it, but then the pandemic happened, and we were like, well, even if we could play shows to promote this record, like it's still, it's going to be a long time before we could actually like get out there and do anything. So we ended up just like doing cassette. Maybe someday it'll come out on vinyl. I love that. But
yeah. I usually like to kind of ask the question, like, what's one of the first records that you ever bought? Like, what's the first music you were listening to? What was music like in the house? And I think that's kind of it, for you, as far as this, like your first introductions.
Yeah.
Your parents didn't really have much of an influence on you, right?
No, they did actually.
Okay.
My whole family is somewhat artistic. My dad was really into, I wasn't very close with my dad. He was kind of a prick. But he was really into classical music. But he loved shitty classical music. Like he loved like Ravel's Bolero and, but some really cool stuff. And as a kid, I hated it. My brother and I like just hated it. And so one day we noticed that he had a Simon and Garfunkel cassette. And we were like, oh God, can we please not listen to Bolero and play this cassette? And like Simon and Garfunkel, I was like, oh, this is so much cooler. Like I like this, And my mom was a big music fan. Her favorite band was the Platters. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They were like 50s vocal band. They're great. I still love that band. I can't listen to them anymore because since my mom passed away, as soon as I hear them, I just start crying. But both of my parents were definitely musical people. I have three sisters, but they're all artists. They're all like painters, sculptors, whatever. So I, for some reason, got the music bug. I don't know, I don't know how. I can, like, down to like one single moment I remember as a little kid. My sister, we used to watch. We would watch Solid Gold, American Bandstand, and Soul Train. Like those were like the best shows. And I think on I think it might have been on Solid Gold or something, there was a performance. Blondie was doing a performance. And I remember remember the performance because it was a black backdrop. They were all wearing black. And every time they would focus on Chris Stein, the drummer, I just remember thinking, like, that is what I want to do. I want to be that guy. Like, I want to be in this situation.
Yeah.
So that was probably like my most formative musical memory.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, so you were saying about watching that Blondie performance. I mean, that might have been the trigger that kind of put it in your mind that you were like, oh, you can actually do music as like a living. It's not just something you just do for fun. It's like, I could actually do that, and that could be what I do.
Yeah. And as a kid, I remember I used to tell people, they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, a rock star. And my mom and my sisters thought that was hilarious. And kind of funny because, I, in my later life or even in my early teens, really started to abhor the idea of rock stars and rock stardom. But
so I was going to start to ask you about the record that you chose for tonight. So we were able to narrow it down together, which was fun. You obviously have so many influences. I understand that it's hard to do. So and I'm happy to kind of try to narrow it down and try to figure that out together. And so ultimately, you chose the Ex and Tom Cora's "Scrabbling at the Lock."
Scrabbling at the Lock, yes. It was. I do have to say that. Well, I do want to say thank you for having me on because this is great. I love this. I love your program, and
sure, man. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, of course, and it's always fun to, talk about music. But I have to say that trying to pick a favorite record was one of the hardest things I've done in a long time. So I thought, like, you and I had like kind of like discussed a few things like through text, and then one of my best friends, Mark, who is a member of Neptune, he and we have a lot of similar music tastes. And so I actually texted him and I'm like, Mark,
what record would you choose?
I was like, what's my favorite record? And he was like, how did you not choose Ministry? And because both like loved, like Ministry. And then after you and I talked, like, I was just like really thinking of all of the records that sort of, like caused a very like a big left turn in my life. And so I ended up choosing the Ex and Tom Cora's "Scrabbling at the Lock" because that is, in my opinion, it's one of the best records ever made. But that really was a huge turning point, not only musically, but in terms of like, like so many different things. I love their DIY aesthetic. They were also, at the time that I discovered them, I didn't care about politics, and they're very political. And I started learning more about American politics through a band from the Netherlands, and I did, like, growing up in the United States. So yeah.
I see. So what was your first experience like with, I'm going to say with the Ex, because I assume that you were introduced to the Ex before you found this album, or maybe even before it came out.
Right. I can pinpoint the exact moment where I heard about the Ex, and I was on a swing set in a park up from like a block up from my mom's old house. And somebody I mentioned earlier is my good friend David Waterhouse, and he's the first person I was ever in like a real band with. Like, I'd played in bands forever, but we were the first band to actually like start playing shows, really fleshing out songs. He was just saying that, like, you got to check out this band, the Ex. And so the first record I actually heard of theirs was called Joggers and Smoggers, which came out, it was the record that came out before Scrabbling at the Lock.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard it, I was, like, I really loved industrial music. I loved, Ministry and Front 242. And I was always looking for sort of the most abrasive and, I guess maybe not necessarily discordant.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe like stuff that was really like gnarly and harsh. And I heard the X, and it was so crazy sounding to me, but it wasn't all distorted guitars. It was, it was truly weird. It was the weirdest stuff I'd heard at the time. But they like the once I heard that, like I heard Joggers and Smoggers, and I started like going backward in the X's catalog, and I really loved them because, again, they're like they're super DIY aesthetic. Every record sounded like the X, but every record was also somewhat of a major shift and a major turn. So when I finally got Scrabbling at the Lock, I mean, the first song on it, State of Shock, is, it starts off with this really rhythmic, these two like rhythmic guitar parts, and the cello comes in, and then it just like goes into this part where they just like start ripping. And I remember when I heard that for the first time, I was just like, holy shit, this is what I hope I can achieve someday, like doing music. Like, this is incredible. But, out of, so I counted just before we did this, of all the releases between DVD, VHS, cassette, 7-inch, 12-inch, and 10-inch, and I have 63 releases by the X. Yeah, a lot of them are, like, because, in the 90s, I didn't really have a turntable. I bought this. This is the original copy of Scrabbling at the Lock, which I probably got in like 93, 94. It was probably 94.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, I've been a crazy collector of their stuff.
All right. Well, let's get into this record, because you've already mentioned a little bit about how your initial experience listening to State of Shock was like. So let's go ahead and play a little bit of that.
So from all the stuff that I had heard from the X previously, there was like a lot of their stuff is very rhythmic, and there's melody, of course, but like the melody that Tom Cora brought, like those cello lines are so cool. And Andy also, like, they do some cool interplay throughout the record. But that song, I remember the first time listening to it, and it's like, dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. But when it really kicks in, I was like, fuck, this is amazing. And that's from end to end is just incredible. And, so Kat from the X, Katharina Bornfield, who also goes by the name Katrin sometimes, she was a massive influence on me, on my drumming. I cannot, I can't claim that I can play as well as her, but she really, like, I loved her, like, she didn't always do like, hi-hat 4/4 beats. She was like, she definitely did like a lot of like African sort of inspired rolling percussion and wood blocks and all of this stuff. And like, I really love, I love that that song State of Shock, I just love the, it's super simple, but throughout that track, there's just like, there's so much that happens. And
there's a couple of things about this song that I have to mention. First of all, I was listening to this again today, and I was realizing that there's a lot of music on this album.
Yeah,
like, I think this album is about, it's just shy of an hour in playtime. Yep. But there is so much music and there's so few words, Because like even the intro that we just listened to, we listened to about a little more than 30 seconds worth of the intro from the beginning into that part where the guitars really kind of come in and like it just starts really getting intense, and none of the words came in yet.
Right.
So, but from what I do gather of the lyrics, it just seems that this song in particular, I love his play of words, especially by the last verse. It's kind of like just throwing in all of these, little phrases of lines that he already kind of mentioned throughout the first two verses.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of jumbled together and just like this kind of like very loose, wordplay and kind of like, what do they call that? Like a train of thought kind of thing.
Right.
Sounds to me like it just basically, the lyrics basically summed up, I think, as like an infinite loop of like chaos and dread.
Yeah.
Does that sound like right to you?
That does sound right.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Yoss's lyrical themes definitely dealt with dread, and definitely dealt with like sort of like existential worry. And the funny thing is a good friend of mine, this guy by the name Don McLean, he saw Neptune at we got invited to play the X's 25th anniversary party at the Paradiso in Amsterdam, and Don went because he was like a huge fan of the X, and he was living in the UK, and he invited us over to do like a tour of the UK, which we did. Don plays in this amazing band called Action Beat, and the last record they did with Yoss. I think they've actually maybe done 2 records with him singing. So they were recording at Machines with Magnets, and so I just went to like because I know all those guys, we'd played with them, but it was still weird. Like I had met Yoss a couple of times, like we played with the X a couple of times, and it was still weird. I was like sitting there and I'm like, shit, I'm sitting in the same room as
one of your idols. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like one of my musical heroes. I'm like, this is so weird. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. But that's the thing too. It's just like, so they've never, you looking at Blondie back when you were a kid, and then like, seeing that rock and roll person on TV and being like, oh my God, I want to do that. As you got older and you got into more like progressive music, more, experimental music, and then you find a band like the X, who have never been a mainstream band, never really kind of experienced any like major success. I mean, like they're definitely like doing well for themselves, I'm sure.
Right.
But that's just the thing, is it's like they've managed to earn themselves a living doing what they love and being true to themselves and doing exactly what they want without compromise. Right. And that's an admirable quality as well for a band. It's just like, you don't have to be a superstar or sell out or be fucking Chumbawamba now in order to be able to live off of doing what you love. Like, and this band seems to be an example of that.
Definitely. I learned a lot from that. I really learned a lot. And at 46 years old, I'm never going to stop playing music. I have no desire to ever play in a pop band or be in a wedding cover band, because that would be worse than like working like the most awful job ever. But it's like really inspirational to me that those guys are musical lifers. I shouldn't say guys, those people.
Those people, yeah.
Good trend. And they, it's like it's really amazing to see people that get so much out of composing and performing and interacting with their audience. Like, I mean, I think those guys are gonna play until they're dead.
Yeah.
An interesting story that I read about Tom Cora. So Tom Cora was an American cellist. But Tom Cora, I think he passed away at like 42, maybe even like 44. He died of cancer. But 8 days before he died, he was on stage. He was playing a concert.
Oh, wow.
I was just like, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Did he know he had cancer? He knew he had it. It
yeah.
wasn't just one of those things that was just undiagnosed and he just kind of.
No, he'd been sick for a while.
Okay.
I think it was like 3 years or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he, I mean, music meant that much to him that, on his deathbed, he gets up and goes and plays a concert. And that, I mean, that should inspire anybody, even if you don't like music,
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So listen, we should move on to the next song, and I don't know if you know how to pronounce it better than I do.
I do. It's
Go
called
ahead.
Igaden Fui Nakazelek.
I feel like the cello really makes this song,
It does. I mean, the song is like a lot, the one on the 6 single series is a lot different. But this actually this kind of sparked a interest in, Eastern European folk music. That really sort of changed my life. Like I got into a bunch of weird folk music, So that song, that was also a big left turn when I heard it. I was like, what are the origins? Like why are they doing this song?
Yeah.
So weird for them.
Yeah.
But again, it was very educational to me. It was
right.
It was great. So
yeah, I mean, this album is very much a turning point for them in their music career. So let's see, Scrabbling at the Lock is this album, they kind of peak at that where they're kind of experimenting with sound and the genres of music. And Scrabbling is their best-selling record in history so far, in their history.
I did not know that.
That was actually off their website, which you told me to look at. So, yeah.
That was their best-selling record. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously not a massive seller either, but it's the best-selling one for them, and with good reason. I mean, it's definitely with these different notes of genres kind of blended into it. It obviously kind of like is a little bit more accessible to other people rather than just like punk rock kids,
Right.
So now this song, loose interpretation of the lyrics is "Cold winds are blowing," and based on the lyrics that you sent to me, one of them that sticks out to me is my hands and legs are under lock and key.
Right.
So it seems to me like this song is very much like not like a protest song. It's more of like, I don't know, an acknowledgement of destitution?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to say that?
It's just about like, maybe.
Yeah, and restrictions. It's like being enslaved almost. So this past year excluded, when have you felt your most restricted?
When have I felt my most? That is a really good question.
I had to limit you from this year because this year was a giveaway.
That was a giveaway. I lucked out as a kid because my mom was always just like, if you want to do music, if you want to do whatever you want to do, you have to do what makes you happy. In that respect, I don't like, I didn't have a lot of restrictions. My mom was amazing. She, never hindered me from, I mean, she wasn't excited about my intake of marijuana when I was a kid, but never necessarily was like, you can't do that.
That's cool.
No, I guess maybe as a young gay man growing up in in Massachusetts, right in all the cities of Boston, I felt very restricted because everyone's so homophobic and so weird and that I think probably was when I felt the most restricted. Like I felt I couldn't be myself for a very long time.
Yeah. I actually spoke with Brandon Paris Sanchez recently.
I love Brandon.
Yeah, everyone does. He's such a great guy. And like he's another one of those people that like we were even spoke about it, how it's just like he doesn't have any androgyny, like he's passes as a straight man,
Right.
Well, so he's had very few circumstances where he has to deal with any kind of persecution or anything like that, But obviously you still have to deal with it, because if you want to be out and show affection to the person that you love, then
Right.
that's what you have to deal with, I guess.
I had a lot of that throughout my life, and still to this day, people are like, "I never thought you were gay," and in my own mind, I feel like anytime I speak, like glitter just like flies out of, like I just like weird.
Yeah.
And so I was working for a law firm, and I like this guy started as an attorney, and he was a younger guy, and we became friends. He was really he's just a really funny guy, and I have a really like fucked up sense of humor, and so we would always just like joke about dumb shit, like doing crystal meth at work, and just stupid stuff that like doesn't really happen. So we had worked together for about, I think, 6 months until the company Christmas party. And I showed up and I was like, "Hey, Josh, this is my husband." And he was like, "Oh, dude, you're fucking hilarious." And I was like, "No, seriously, this is my husband." And he was like, "Oh." And still, if I talk to him, he's like, "I feel so bad about that." And I was like, "You shouldn't. That was one of the best things that ever happened." But I was like, to me, like in my own mind, I'm just like a screaming ninny, like ah! And
Right.
so I do like, I have gotten that a lot over the years. I mean, it might be like because I grew up in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and you had no choice other than to, it was like, get your ass kicked or,
Assimilate.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's kind of what happened.
All right, so we should move on though.
Let's move on to the song King Kami.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they definitely have a lot of there's a lot of lead time on their songs.
Yeah.
But that one in particular, it's amazing because you have this really trebly, tinny guitar, and the bass. So this guy, Luke Clausen, was his name. He was in the band for, I believe, 19 years, and he and Katrin, like the way they played together, they were such an awesome rhythm section. So the thing I really liked about, or I really like about this song and any of these songs, is they let each other sort of breathe. You'll hear like guitar, and something else will come in, then the vocals come in, and then they'll also be reductive in the way that they compose their music, and they give everybody space.
Let's move on to the next song, Caruso.
That was another turning point where I was like, okay, you can take an instrument and not play it traditionally. Like the whole idea of an instrument is to generate sound, and however you generate sound from it, be it like, I mean, Terry from the X, there's a video of them playing in Utrecht where he's just hitting the guitar with a hammer. And that was always pretty influential also.
Yeah.
I don't know, you like drill your guitar or like throw it on the floor, and like that's your part in the song. So
Right.
so yeah, but yeah, like, so I do think like a lot of times what Tom Cora does, like it does sound like violin or like viola, or sometimes it even sounds like guitar when he's just like straight up.
Two things. Because of the story that you just mentioned, I don't think that you were part of it, but that first Neptune record, the Studios series.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of smashed bottles in that record.
There is. Yes.
So who plays a smashed bottle?
This guy named Doug Last.
Okay.
He is the only former, current, whatever member of Neptune. I've only met Doug once. My friend Carl, who came over, who was the original bassist the other night, they're really close. So what he did was he had like a Rubbermaid trash barrel,
Yeah.
a cinder block in it that had a microphone, and he just smash bottles on the cinder block. And so on that record, he's credited as, I think, percussion and empties.
Do you know how many bottles he smashed in that record? Because it's over a number of songs. It's not just one song.
No, it's like almost on every song.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can find out.
All right. No, I just picking your brain. Getting back to this song, so Caruso, according to the lyrics, which there are very few to this long song, basically seems to be about a person just kind of struggling with sleep.
Right.
You know, it's fairly self-explanatory. So, tour can be an awful place to try to catch some sleep. What is one of the worst places you've had to sleep on tour?
Oh shit! I don't even know where to start.
Just one. I know there's many, because it's like every day there's a some horrible disaster.
Okay, so Neptune played a show in a town called Kran, Slovenia.
Sounds good already.
I mean, Slovenia is awesome. It's a beautiful country, but we played in this building that was a former Olympic. I think like the Olympics in maybe like the 80s or something were in Kran, Slovenia, and so this building it housed an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and then it had like another like sort of side room, which these people squatted, and they made the side room into a bar. And the Olympic-sized swimming pool was made into like, there was like, all these like skateboard ramps and shit, and kind of like, it was kind of cool. The place had no bathroom, and it also, the only heat was in the large room where the pool was a diesel generator that all of the diesel fumes were just coming into both rooms. And then they had like a wood burning stove, which was leaking smoke into the room.
Nice.
So at the time we were there, it might have been like, it was either very early spring or early fall. And it was really damp and really disgusting. And I remember like we slept basically on the floor of the bar in sleeping bags, and we had to keep the fire going to not freeze to death or get hypothermia or whatever. And I remember like trying to fall asleep, and I was like, I'm not going to wake up.
Yeah, you're going to die of like carbon monoxide poisoning.
Die of carbon monoxide poisoning. So to make matters worse, we had a day off the next day, and the guy who set up the show was awesome. This guy was rad, and he was like, "Oh, of course, you stay here." And I was like, no fucking way. I was like, no way. And so by the second night, that was one of those times where I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? I mean, there's been a lot, but those were two that come to mind.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. I that's just what I was hoping for. All right, let's move on to the next song. Let's listen to The Flute's Tale. Yeah, like I said, a lot of music, very little words.
So the opening of this song encapsulates pretty much everything I love about the X, because you have Katrin's like really interesting drumming. There's like some woodblock and like bells, whatever she's playing, and then that piercing what I think is probably like Terry's guitar. And then Andy comes in with this sort of melodic line, and then the bass playing. It's just like everything, it layers in, but it's all so weird, and it doesn't really work, but it works. It definitely is like their take on the Emperor's new clothes,
Yeah, there are something similar to that, but so that's what led me to wonder, what is your favorite fable?
I don't know if I have one.
Favorite lesson in one of those like nursery rhyme, fables, folklore?
This is more of a novel, but I've always loved, and this, I think I said when we were talking, like the first band I ever became obsessed with when I was 10 years old or 11 years old was the Smiths.
Mm-hmm.
The lead singer, who's a bit of a dude, was really inspired by Oscar Wilde.
Hmm.
So that led me to like start reading Oscar Wilde. And one, I still love The Picture of Dorian Gray, even though it's a novel. I mean, it's basically it's about vanity, and I actually I got a lot from that book. I thought that was I thought that was pretty great. Have you read it? Do you know it?
Mm-mm. No, I'm not literate. I don't read really. There's very few novels I've ever read. The ones that I have, like, are very like near and dear to me.
Right.
But there's a number of ones on my list that I've just kind of never gotten to, and now, especially with like the new business and the podcast and doing this research and shit, I don't have time.
I wish. I mean, I used to.
There's a dog in there. There's an animal in there.
Yeah, that's my dog, Bear. Barry, come here. Barry is after Barry Gibb of the Beat.
Okay. There's a couple of animals in there. I don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah, there's George.
Okay.
That's Barry.
Is that Boy George? Who's that?
Actually, he has a split name, so it's after George Clinton and George Harrison.
Oh, okay.
We have another dog named Lenny, who was named after Leonard Cohen, but his middle name is Giuseppe after Giuseppe Verdi, because my husband and I are really big opera fans.
Okay.
That one you see right there, that's Barry.
Okay. Barry.
He's good with the falsetto.
Yeah. So we left off discussing Picture of Dorian Gray. I don't read.
Picture of Dorian Gray. So yeah, basically, the story is kind of hard to like give a synopsis of it, but basically, there's a portrait of this guy,
Dorian Gray. Yeah.
And he's a very vain person, and he, like, sort of makes this deal where he never ages, but the portrait does.
So is vanity like a bad thing? Is that what helps you realize that it's kind of a detrimental perspective?
Kind of like a vain dick, and
a veiny dick? Is that what it is?
He's a veiny dick.
Yeah, that sounds brutal. That sounds harsh.
That's a really good stage name. My next band, I'm going to be called like Veiny Richard.
Sure. Yeah. Take it.
I'm not describing the novel well, so but I mean, in terms of fables, I think that one that would be my favorite, I guess.
So what did you learn from it though? Like, what is the lesson?
Not to be a veiny dick.
Oh, not to be a veiny dick. Okay.
You can have one.
You can have one, sure. I mean, and most of us do. I mean,
not be one.
It gets worse as you get older. I see. Yeah,
definitely.
All right, let's move on. We actually have a lot more songs to get through. I'm actually going to go ahead and skip one, I think. For now, let's move on to Adore.
So that, to me, that totally showcases how much of a badass drummer Katrin is. Like, I love that drum line. It's so damn good. I love it.
Yeah, that one stuck out to me today when I was listening to it. I was just like, oh yeah, listen to that.
One of my favorites.
Definitely. Cool. So now this song is a little interesting because it actually seems, lyrically speaking, to be a kind of a terribly depressing song, but with like this weird jangly rock veneer.
Right.
So you don't necessarily kind of hear how sad it is. So aside from the political tinge to that this song has to it, I was going to ask you, what doors would you say that joining Neptune opened for you?
Oh, damn. Many. It was, well, I mean, first and foremost, it was, opening a door to like lifelong friendships with people who I truly and genuinely love and will always be a part of my life. And, it's just like such good people. I've learned so much from everybody involved, like whether it be like musically, he's going to kill me for saying this, but Jason, you know, I used to kind of call him, he was sort of like the dad of Neptune. Jason's a very, very, very smart guy. And he, you know, there would be times when I'd be like, I don't understand this. And he would like, you know, explain it to me. And like, you know, he turned me on to, you know, like building stuff. And it also like it opened doors where I got to meet people that I admired. Like we played with the X 3 times. You know, we got to play with David Yao of the Jesus Lizard, who was like another, you know, they were
Legend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the biggest doors it opened was like, you know, going on all these tours. And I keep in contact with so many people I met at shows, either whether they put on shows or we just like hit it off. So you know, that really, like, I think the friendship element, the people that I met, the stuff that I learned, the places that I got to travel to, uh, were like, those were huge
Hmm.
door openings for me. Like getting to play in Slovenia, we played in Zagreb, Croatia 3 times, and
Hmm.
when you just get to go and, you know, you're in a country that, you know, the language is completely different, the lifestyle is completely different, but you have these connections with people that like you just want to hug every time you see them. You're like, ah, this is great, you know.
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, I mean, I guess like it even culturally taught me a lot.
Hmm.
It also challenged me to be a better musician. You know, it's, I don't know. It's definitely my time in Neptune is definitely some of the best times of my life, and always will be. You know,
Hmm.
and again, you know, like the friendship, like Jason and Mark are, you know, two of the, you know, I hold them in the highest regard. You know, like if anything ever happened, if I ever needed anything, or if I had a question or whatever, like, you know, those guys are always there, and they're always,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Absolutely. It sounds it. That's beautiful, man.
yeah, I love it.
Cool, man. Well, listen. Hey, we've been talking a fuck long time.
Yeah.
Uh.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, we should get going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for introducing the X to me.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Have a good night.
All right, Dan. You too.